Julia, exciting news. In a couple of weeks, that book will be released. Show it to the camera here. Yes.
This is the pack shot.
Yes.
Yes, it's called Don't Make Me Laugh. So I'm a journalist, not that you could tell. But yeah, I mostly write about TV, comedy, and I've always really loved comedy and never really had any ambitions to go into fiction. But I keep saying post Me Too, like it's happened in the past tense. I hate when people do that. But sort of post 2017, when Me Too became a thing, the people I know who work in comedy started to talk more openly about the high density of awful men working in stand-up comedy. Some of them in front of the microphone, some of them promoters, a whole raft of them. And it seemed to be they were just impossible to remove them from the industry, so embedded are they. And so an idea for a book started to sort of churn around then, and I started writing it in about 2019. So it's a heavily fictionalized, it's entirely fictionalized, but obviously based on lots of real stories I've heard, because as the years have gone on, I've taken a greater interest in this aspect of comedy, the dark underbelly of the industry. And, women have started to talk to me. I've investigated a few stories myself, and with little else to do with them because of, the libel laws in this country, I just decided to write something made up.
Give us a plot teaser.
So I've started off with, there's a radio producer called Ali, and she's 40. We meet her on her 40th birthday. It's the worst day of her life. Everything's gone wrong. But on that day, when she's at her absolute lowest, she meets this exciting stand-up comedian called Ed Catchpole. And they hatch a plan to maybe work together. She's looking for a comedian for her radio show. He seems to offer her the way out. Their friendship starts to blur into something else. And then she has a kind of moment of revelation where she realizes perhaps he, and certainly the industry he occupies, is full of dreadful people, most of them men. All of them men, let's face it.
And when you were, obviously you had the idea, and you in the comedy world, partners in the comedy world, had it always happened, but it was sort of not really talked about, and then the Me Too movement sort of was a catalyst for there being more discussion?
So. I think that seemed to shake something loose, shall we say. So it wasn't like a moment of all at once. And people now still talk about, is British comedy going to have its Me Too moment? I hate the use of that word. And obviously, we were talking about Russell Brand earlier, the accusations against him. The BBC investigation has been sort of published today.
Tara, what was the line that they said?
It says, it is also clear that there were compliance inadequacies on some of Russell Brand's Radio 2 shows, which led to content being aired that would not be broadcast today. I
mean, the kind of compliance inadequacies phrase, there's a lot of excuses for a lot of people in a lot of different worlds that would play it down in that similar way.
Yeah, I think the problem with, obviously these are all allegations, from a different area of either showbiz, publishing. Obviously, we've had the Neil Gaiman allegations more recently, the Noel Clarke story, as mentioned earlier. There are so many of these stories, and a lot of them, they're not all dealing with the same thing. Some of them are dealing with criminal behaviour, alleged criminal behaviour. Some of them are dealing with a grey area, which is kind of what I'm more interested in. But the kind of historical line is, we can't say it was different back then. Everyone just looked the other way. So what do we say that sounds acceptable? It's not compliance. It's a culture of looking the other way. If someone is making you money and kind of like in a social group, a silverback, you don't point to them and say, "What are you doing with women?" You sort of just pretend you don't see it, and that is what we've all done. It's not just men or women. We've all done that.
And there's always the hope that since it's been raised, obviously it's all been fixed now, and it doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. And then everything just keeps popping up. Like it always has.
And it will. And I think that's so the Gaiman story, I think, is the most recent one. And people are saying, oh, no, the reaction is, oh, no, not him, or oh, him, obviously, everyone knew. Those are the two reactions, never anything in between. And the kind of, oh, gosh, these keep coming up. When will it end? Well, it will never end, because it's not about the bad apples that keep on. Bad apples flying under, can bad apples fly under the radar? I think they can. But it's about the culture that, and comedy specifically, I think, was so interesting because the culture of comedy is still fairly boysy. It's a boys' club. There are loads of women and non-binary acts now becoming as successful as the men, but it's taken a long time, and it's still the fabric of comedy is still a boys' club. It's going to take a huge cultural shift for this not to keep popping up, and it will do. And the thing that shocked me most in comedy, I think, was young comedians. Like going to the Edinburgh Festival, as I do every year, completely love it. Young comedians, female comedians, doing their acts about being sexually assaulted on the comedy circuit at the Edinburgh Festival, being asked to give oral sex to a promoter in order to get their next gig. It's not 20 years ago, it's now. And that, without an HR department to stop it, to call it into question, is just not going to change.
And so the book is out in 2 weeks. It is called Don't Make Me Laugh.
Don't Make Me Laugh.
It's brilliant. I read it actually. I was on a press trip to Canada, and I got jet lagged because it was such a good book. I didn't sleep.
I'm very sorry.
It was so good. It's really good.